Round 3 of the Grenke Chess Festival 2026 Freestyle Open A, and the leaderboard is absolutely packed. 10 players share the lead on a perfect 3 out of 3, including Magnus Carlsen, Ian Nepomniachtchi, Hans Niemann, and Vincent Kayama. With 60 games decisive out of 69 played today, the field is clearly playing for blood. We have one elite clash to break down. And it is a masterclass in positional domination from the world's greatest player. Magnus Carlsen, the Norwegian world #1 rated 2888, needs no introduction. He grinds opponents into dust with seemingly effortless technique. Maxime Lagarde, the French Grandmaster rated 2621, is a solid and resourceful player, but entering this game nearly 270, a low points below Carlsen. For Lagarde, a draw would be a triumph. For Carlsen, anything less than a full point in a round where 9 others share the lead simply would not do. This game opens as a freestyle chess contest, meaning the pieces are randomly arranged behind the pawns rather than in the standard starting position. The back rank here features knights on the edges, bishops flanking a central rook, queen and king side by side, with rooks at the corners. This demands pure over-the-board calculation rather than memory, which in theory should level the playing field. In practice, it tends to favor the most universally gifted player in the room. Carlsen opens with the classical central thrust, immediately staking a claim on the center and activating the long diagonals. In any chess variant, central space is king, and this move announces aggressive intentions from move 1. Black mirrors the move, establishing a symmetric pawn tension in the center. This is the natural response, contesting the center directly and freeing lines for the queenside pieces. A flexible knight development, moving off the edge and toward the center while keeping options open. In freestyle positions, finding good squares for the knights early is crucial since standard development patterns no longer apply automatically. Black reinforces the e5 pawn with a solid pawn structure, steering toward a King's Indian or Philidor-like setup. The eval nudges slightly in white's favor, suggesting Carlsen already has a small edge from the opening configuration. The second knight joins the game, pointing toward the center at d5 and e4. White now has 2 well-placed knights and maintains comfortable central control. Black prepares a queenside pawn break with b5, also giving the queen's knight a future retreat square. This is a common idea when black wants to challenge white's central presence. Carlsen strikes in the center immediately, opening the position while black is still developing. The position is now essentially equal according to the engine, but the dynamic tension favors the better calculator. A bold queenside advance, gaining space and eyeing the c4 square for a knight. Black is playing for active counterplay rather than simply defending, which is the right fighting spirit against Carlsen. White keeps the queenside under control, preventing any piece from jumping to b4 and preparing future queenside operations. A quiet but prophylactic move in the Carlsen style. The knight heads to b6, an active post where it eyes d5 and supports the b5 pawn advance. Black is developing with purpose, and the position remains roughly balanced. An unusual queen development. But in freestyle positions, the queen can often be activated earlier than in standard chess. From d3, the queen covers the d-file and eyes the kingside, while also keeping an eye on the center. Black activates the bishop to a6, pressuring the d3 queen and eyeing any future weak squares. However, the engine bumps white's advantage to plus half a pawn, suggesting this active-looking move may slightly misplace the bishop. Carlsen sidesteps the bishop pressure and repositions the queen aggressively toward the kingside. The queen on g3 eyes both g7 and the e5 pawn, increasing the pressure and nudging the evaluation closer to plus. Black brings the queen to e7, connecting the rooks and defending e5, but Stockfish flags this as a significant inaccuracy with the eval swinging to nearly +8 for white. The queen on e7 is somewhat passive and may become a target later. Calm bishop development, preparing to coordinate the pieces and potentially castle. White is in no rush and simply improves every piece methodically. Black throws a pawn at the kingside, trying to generate some counterplay before white fully consolidates. The engine notes this is another imprecision with the evaluation staying firmly in white's favor. Carlsen meets the h5 advance head-on, locking the kingside pawn structure and preventing black from gaining space there. The eval climbs toward +9, and white's grip on the position tightens. The bishop retreats all the way back to c8, a concession that signals black is struggling to find constructive plans. The position remains difficult for Lagarde despite the roughly balanced pawn count. White tucks the bishop to e3, building a harmonious setup and preparing to increase central pressure. Every white piece is finding a natural and effective square. Black plants the knight aggressively on c4, attacking the bishop and trying to create complications, but this turns out to be a mistake according to the engine, with the eval jumping to +8 after white's response. The knight on c4 can be captured favorably. Carlsen snaps off the knight immediately, gaining the bishop pair and a material edge. The eval ticks up to +0 as white now has a clear structural and material advantage. Black recaptures with the b-pawn, but the engine marks this as another mistake, with the eval staying near plus the c4 pawn is now an isolated and potentially weak advanced passer that white can target. The knight reroutes through d2, eyeing the c4 pawn and preparing to re-enter the game with fresh energy. White has a clear plan of winning the c4 pawn while maintaining pressure everywhere. The bishop returns to a6 again, but Stockfish considers this yet another imprecision, keeping the eval near plus black's position is slowly deteriorating with each move. Carlsen opens the center with a pawn exchange, and interestingly, the eval drops slightly toward plus. Sometimes the straightest-looking move is not objectively the sharpest, but it maintains a clear advantage. Black recaptures, and the position simplifies somewhat with symmetric pawns on e5. The eval nudges back up to +8, confirming white retains a meaningful positional advantage. The knight maneuvers toward better squares, heading for e3 or g3, where it can assist in the attack on the kingside or support central operations. Black brings the other knight into play, but the engine views this as an inaccuracy, with the eval holding at plus. The knight on d7 is somewhat passive and does not immediately solve black's coordination problems. Clean pawn grab. Carlsen simply takes the a7 pawn, exploiting black's loosely placed pieces. The eval drops slightly to +4, but white has banked a free pawn with no real compensation for black. The knight bounces to b6, attacking the bishop on a7 and trying to recover some material. Black is fighting back with the limited resources available. White trades the bishop for the knight without hesitation, maintaining the initiative and keeping the position simplified in white's favor. Black recaptures and the position has simplified considerably. The eval holds at +3, a modest but stubborn advantage that Carlsen will nurse through the endgame. The knight finds an excellent central outpost on e3, eyeing d5 and f5 while keeping the position under control. White's pieces are coordinating beautifully. Black plays g6 to shore up the kingside, but this suddenly gives white a significant opportunity. The eval leaps to +9 after this move, as the pawn structure weaknesses begin to accumulate. Surprisingly, the engine considers this a slight inaccuracy, with the eval dropping back to near equality. In such positions, precise rook placement is critical, and white may have had sharper options. Black tucks the king to h7, stepping off the back rank and providing some shelter. The position is tense but manageable for both sides at this point. Carlsen finally castles, securing the king and connecting the rooks. White's king is safe and the position is poised for in-game maneuvering. Black activates the rook to d8, placing it on the open file and contesting the center. Both sides are now centralizing their rooks in the in-game. The queen relocates to f3, keeping pressure on the position. Interestingly, the eval dips slightly below equality here, suggesting black has managed to hold well through the middle game complications. An active rook centralizing on the fourth rank, contesting the d-file and eyeing white's pawns. The engine considers the position essentially equal and black is fighting effectively. The knight retreats to a2, a slightly awkward square but useful for protecting the c3 pawn and preparing further queenside play. Black advances the c-pawn aggressively, trying to create a passed pawn or at least complicate matters. The eval stays near +2, meaning white still holds a small edge. Carlsen captures with the b-pawn, keeping the pawn structure relatively clean and maintaining control. The rook swings to a4, eyeing the a-pawn and creating pressure on white's queenside structure. Black continues to find active counterplay. White doubles rooks on the e-file, increasing pressure and preparing for central breakthroughs. Both rooks are now activated and working together. Black grabs the a3 pawn, winning material and evening the pawn count somewhat. The eval remains near +1, a practically equal position requiring precise play from both sides. The knight jumps to b4, targeting the bishop on a6 and entering an active posting. White keeps the pressure on black's pieces. The bishop retreats to b5 to avoid the knight and maintain some activity. The position is deeply double-edged, with both sides having active pieces. Carlsen plants the knight on d5, a magnificent central outpost. The knight on d5 is dominant and cannot easily be challenged, giving white a positional trump going into the endgame. Black eliminates the powerful knight, but this opens the c-file and gives white the connected passed pawns on the d and e files. The remaining knight recaptures on d5, and once again a white knight sits on that dominant central outpost. The eval is dead equal according to Stockfish, but the position requires black to find only moves. And here is where the game breaks open. Black plays the queen to e6, but this is a serious mistake with the eval immediately swinging to +5 in white's favor. The queen on e6 is misplaced and critically leaves the bishop on b5 undefended, which Carlsen exploits at once. Carlsen activates the rook immediately to b1, threatening the bishop on b5 and increasing the pressure along the b-file. The eval jumps to +6, and black is already in serious trouble. Black plays the rook to b8, trying to defend the bishop, but this is a catastrophic blunder. The eval explodes to +2, a swing of 5 full pawns. Lagarde has walked into a devastating tactic that Carlsen spots immediately. Carlsen captures the bishop on b5 with the rook, and just like that, white has won a full piece. The eval rockets to +7, and the game is essentially over. In desperation, black snatches the f2 pawn with a check, but the engine labels this the final decisive mistake with a swing of nearly 8 pawns. Black is fishing for tricks in a completely lost position. Carlsen simply recaptures with the queen, brushing off the check and leaving white up a full piece with a +6 evaluation. Black resigned shortly after, unable to cope with the massive material deficit. The turning point came on move 27 when Lagarde played the queen to e6, leaving the bishop on b5 hanging. Carlsen activated the rook to b1 instantly, and when black tried to defend with the rook to b8, the bishop was simply captured with no compensation. A clean technical victory from the world number 1, who now sits atop a congested leaderboard with a perfect 3 out of 3. An absolutely dominant performance from Carlsen, who joins 9 other players on a perfect score heading into round 4 of the Grenke Chess Festival with so many top players tied at the top. The next round promises fireworks. Let us know in the comments which game you are most excited to see covered next, and if you are enjoying the coverage, subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a move.